Well, welcome to the Sean Trey Show. I've got an awesome guest today. Now, would you like to introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
Yep, my name is Trevor Paperny. I am a director and executive producer in Los Angeles at a production company called Plus Plus.
Nice. Now, how did you get started in film? What was it that got you going, man?
To be honest, at this time in my life, I definitely went through some hoops and as part of my journey, and I remember I was trying to get a job pretty much anywhere I could. Restaurants. I wanted to be a busboy. I just wanted anything I could do. I was living on a friend's couch at the time, and I dropped out of high school. Was going through some stuff, and one of my friends had told me, kind of a mentor of mine, he's like, why don't you stop focusing on yourself and just help somebody else out? And
Wow.
the next day, I came across a woman who was struggling. She was very emotional, and she was explaining to me how she was being evicted and she needed some help. And I brought over a couple of my buddies. We moved this woman's stuff. I had no idea who she was. I helped her move her stuff into storage, and she became a good friend of mine. And 3 months later, she said, "Hey, I got my shit together. I'm back into producing. I never told you I was a producer, but would you be interested in this internship? They're looking for somebody." And I was like, sure. And I said yes. And I kind of kept that same mentality of seeing how I can be helpful and what more I can give and what I can do. And that's kind of led me to the position that I am today. I'm actually at the same place that I started. It's an agency called The Many, and I've been there for almost 10 years, about 9 years.
That's really awesome, man. It's awesome too, like that perspective of my dad was a big person, and he always drilled into us, like, live a life of helping people. And my dad was the type of guy, like, we'd be driving down the road, and anytime someone was like, a car and a flat tire or something, he'd pull right over and he'd be out there, changing the tire himself, man. And he would do it. If someone was walking down the street without a shirt, he'd take his shirt off. Like, that's the type of guy he was. And I think there's something special about that is, that because what you said there too, that was really special, man, was like, that was totally organic. You weren't trying to get anything back, but yet your act of kindness opened this door for you. Really cool.
And it's been a kind of a testament of my life that the more I think about others, the more I receive.
Tell me more about that, if you don't mind. I love that, but tell me more.
No, it's just it's really easy, I think, as humans to want to be selfish and think about ourselves and what we can get. And I've definitely been, don't get me wrong.
I hear you.
I still act this way. I still act this way every now and then, but I'm able to kind of check myself on it and kind of act within contrary action. And I find that the more I think about others, the more I think about how can I be here to be helpful, I receive so much more, whether it's gigs, jobs, respect. Life's crazy.
I think that there's a magic to it, man. There's definitely a magic to it, to life. And I've had so many situations that, like, so many times in my life where I was just like butting my head up against a wall, you know what I mean? And things weren't flowing. Yeah. And you're just like, what am I supposed to do right now? And in those moments, like, I kind of took a step back and just said, well, let's see what happens. And then, like you said, there's like something happens. I bump into someone or some type of spontaneous thing happens and the door opens. It's wild like that,
My buddy just told me a quote. And he said, religious people are afraid to go to hell. Spiritual people have already been there.
I love that.
Isn't that interesting?
I love that. So true, man. Have you found that play out in your own life?
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah. Yeah. I've been sober a long time. But, things are different now, and I'm so grateful and so glad. And Life is beautiful.
Right. Now, how do you find, already we're diving into some fun, deep stuff, right? Right in the first 5 minutes. And I'm loving that. How do you pair some of this with your filmmaking?
I think it's interesting, and it sounds a little overly dramatic, but I feel like there was definitely a point in my life and a time in my life where I was very kind of numb to the outside world. And I found that like film was really one of the only things that really made me feel, right? Like when I would see a scene from a movie and the hair would stand up on my arms, mm-hmm. like I could really feel and I could really be captivated by this moment. And I feel like that's something that I get inspired by to want to be able to provide to people through viewing content. And so, I had an experience where I got to work with Ezekiel Mitchell, his professional bull rider.
I saw that clip. It's amazingly interesting.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the full thing, but
yeah, he's awesome. So that was a series that I did for Snapchat, and it was on a black. He's like one of the only black bull riders in the PBR. It's like the NFL of bull riding, right? And he explains his bull riding as his way out of poverty. And there's such an interest, like just getting a sense of his story and feeling the emotions that he feels. And you can really feel this moment. And if it wasn't for film and it wasn't for the ability to get to talk to this man and share his story, no one would ever get to experience that. No one would even know that maybe bull riding even existed.
Right.
And I think that's what we were talking about before, right? That gives you the opportunity to dive into these different pools of life.
Right. And that's so special. Like, because I remember I was born in New England, and then we moved down to the South. But then when I was about 10 years old, 7th grade, about 10 years old, we moved up to Idaho. And where I lived in Idaho, in the town of
Beautiful place.
I lived in Caldwell. And Caldwell and Nampa had what they call the Snake River Stampede. Snake River Stampede was one of the biggest rodeos out in the Western United States. It was a big rodeo. And one of the things that always captivated me about bull riding is like, I'm a small guy, right? I'm 6 foot, yeah. But I'm not big. I am lean. You know what I mean? And I did judo, but like, I remember when I was in graduate school, one of my classmates was a former NFL player, and like his thigh was like the size of my chest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, the idea of getting hit by a linebacker or something, I would get broken. You know what I mean? But that's just football. But like when you're talking about a bull, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's insane. And like,
it's insane.
It's insane. These animals are so huge.
2,000 pounds
of pure muscle.
I've never seen it. Pure muscle.
Pure muscle.
I've never seen anything like it until like, I remember the first time we were about to roll camera and I was right up in there.
Oh my gosh.
In the shoots when they're slapping themselves, they're slapping themselves in the thighs, and they're praying, and they're like trying to get in the moment, and there's just like this moment of bliss right when the gate opens, like everything kind of stops, but then just seeing like you want to think that like the guy is trying to outmuscle the bull, but the reality is he's just flowing with it, right?
Yeah.
He's moving with it. It's like a beautiful thing. He's like dancing with the bull.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. There was every time that I've watched clips of that, I constantly will like slow down bull riding clips and watch them again and again and again. And I just am like, now, like, how is he doing it? Like, how in the world is this person staying on top of this massive ball of muscle that just is trying to get this thing up, put this person off? And like you said, there is this dance. There's this absolute dance. But it's such a great analogy for life as well,
Yeah.
Because
for sure.
So much of what we encounter in life is like a mad bull, and you just kind of,
it's like a bull,
kind of roll with it.
And your instinct is to want to fight it, right? Your instinct is to want to run away or fight it. But the reality is if you just kind of move with it, it's all good.
When my daughter was born, it was like I thought that I had everything. My daughter's 5. And I remember the day that they said I was going to have a daughter. I remember the day we got the ultrasound, and it shook my world, man. And just not was sad, but it was just like, so much love, so much worry.
Yeah.
And ever since then, fatherhood has been like riding a bull, 100%. And yet I love every single moment of it. Go back. I want to know what it was like to film this, because I mean, I was looking at your stuff, man. I was looking at a lot of your work. You have some amazing action sequences, like, with that. Then I watched a NOS commercial you did. Absolutely amazing cinematography and shot choices and selection, and you're the director. Like, how did you create these concepts and these stories? Like, how did you capture this stuff, man?
Which one?
I was watching.
Which one do you want me to talk about?
Let's do the bull riding first.
So the bull riding, I was filming. I was directing a commercial with this gentleman, and I was interviewing him for this commercial, and I was like, "Wow, I love this guy's story. This guy's amazing."
Yeah.
Like there's so much more we can dive and explore here, other than what we're slated to do for this commercial, where it's to talk about the product and America. And
Right.
There's so much more here. And I remember on the flight home to LA, I was talking to my producer. I was like, I want to do a show on this guy. This guy's amazing. And I kind of I started building out like a few slides in a treatment, and he had been in him and a friend had been in meetings with Snapchat pitching other shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the executives was like, no, I'm not feeling any of these. We got to do something. We got to do something wild. We got to do something like bull riding. And my buddy goes, bing, like, I have the perfect guy. And like a week later, they set me up on a phone call, and I pitched them the concept. And after that, they had us do a casting video of like showing us who would be in the film, and kind of fleshed out the narrative a little bit more in the story. And they gave us the green light, and we went out and shot it.
That's awesome, man. Now, logistically, was it a challenging shoot?
I mean, look, I've done a lot of like going into events or like arenas. And I think the hardest part is figuring out, like, in such a large space and format, like you have only a certain amount of time to capture like your hero in his moment. How do you want to capture that? How are we going to get sound where we need to? So I think just like thinking more from like the logistics producer standpoint, I think was the most challenging, right? Like just thinking about where we need to be, where we need cameras, figuring out, I mean, I knew nothing about bull riding, right? Yeah. So like I had to like fully immerse myself in how the point systems work, how the scores work, how the rounds work, so I can stay upbeat and follow the narrative and make sure that we had cameras on it at all times. But once we figured out kind of the flow of the events, they're all very similar.
Okay.
And then we started having some fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, because for me, like, I when I do photography, one of my biggest challenges is always movement, man. It's like, and like I was taking some photos just of my wife and daughter, and my daughter is she's all over the place, right? And even that, I was just like, I felt challenged to keep up with it. I was like, 15 seconds. That's what they normally ride, right? Like you have
8
seconds. It's only 8 seconds.
8 seconds. Oh. And most of the guys don't ride 8 seconds, right?
No, like it's this tiny window.
It is. And we were shooting vertical, right? So Snapchat's content's all solely purpose for the phone. So that was, first we started shooting 16:9, and then we were like, let's just commit. And so we built like some plates so that we can flip the camera totally vertical on the Easy Rig. And we just committed to shooting vertical. And once we did that, it was a lot easier. But yeah, for the rides, really, I would typically have two cameras, one on a more kind of like medium wide full coverage. Yeah. And then somebody on like a tight, getting like facial expressions, the muscle of the bulls, and like some textures.
So awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's really interesting is how do you approach something that's just so different? How do you go about approaching, say you're getting, someone comes to you with a whole new concept that's, outside of your frame of reference. How do you normally approach stuff?
I think that is like part of what I'm really good at, like getting passionate about things that I like, finding a way to become passionate about something and connecting to it. Like, I've done this with really weird stuff. I did a project that was like talking about a woman's story going through how she discovered. It's a product called Invite. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a saliva test, and then they take your saliva and they can tell you what diseases based on your gene pool you may be open to. I can't do the test because I'm completely neurotic and I'm a hypochondriac to the fullest. So like, it wouldn't be helpful for me to know what I might die of. But anyway, it was a commercial about this product, and this woman was sharing her story about she discovered she might have breast cancer. And me and this woman had absolutely nothing in common, but I think me finding the connection to fear, right? Her connection to fear and what she's going through and what she's feeling and how she overcame that is what I connect to and find passion so that I can tell her story. Right. So I think it's me just finding the ways to connect and relate.
That's really awesome. And it's interesting because, like with what I've been doing with this podcast is that, there's something special in every story, every person's story. There's something special, and there's something that, you can relate to, or you can find other people can relate to, but you have to find it. And so it's like, sometimes I don't find it until later in the interview. Sometimes it takes me time to kind of follow this serendipitous route. But, I think if you're willing to kind of go down the rabbit hole of someone's story, you can always find something that you can boil it down to,
Why do you do this?
Why do I do this? That's actually 100% two things. One, three things. Reason number one. I saw over the last couple of years how friends on both sides of the political spectrum, or all sides of the political spectrum, just went all over the place. And people that were, great friends with each other turned on each other. And I'm not going to go bash the media this, but I do know that there is a ton of content that goes up that's divisive and that's kind of negative. And I just wanted to be apolitical on something and just try to spread positivity, because you know what? There's good people on all sides. And if we can try to inspire people to tell stories, to share their personal views and share their inspirations, I think that we can start listening to people, because I don't want to hear about what this what this not corporation, but like this company says that we should be watching on the media. You know what I mean? I want to hear people's stories, and I want to hear, and I want to connect with people. And that's to me important. That's number one. I wanted to share media that kind of inspired people. Number two, I wanted to meet new people, and I wanted to network and kind of just grow something that was fun for me to do, that I enjoy. I love talking to people. But the third, the biggest reason is number three. And I wanted something that my daughter could watch someday and be proud of daddy and see what I believe.
That's cool.
You know what I mean? And like, I feel like this is a kind of, I hope, knock on some wood, that I'll be around for most of her life. But you never know, man. You never know. Yeah. You never know in life when is your time. And I feel like this is something that if I can just put out there and teach little life lessons, or help have other people share life lessons, maybe that's something that when my daughter's, 50, 60, even 30, whenever, she can sit down and watch some of these and go, my dad wasn't totally crazy. You know what I mean?
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, because, I think, and I think that, when I was a kid, one of my favorite books was this book on the Old West. And it wasn't like a Louis L'Amour where it was a grand story. It was a bunch of vignettes. It was a bunch of little stories. And it was kind of like what what was it? The Coen brothers just did that Western that was a bunch of short stories.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
Awesome,
what was that called again?
Oh, Buster Scruggs or something?
Each episode was a different story, right?
Yeah. So good, man.
That was great.
That was really good. I think it was like Buster Scruggs or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Was it?
That was
a great one. But I mean, I love the idea of vignettes. I love the idea of kind of a little short stories here and there. So,
yeah.
Now,
cool.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I respect it. I think it's awesome.
Trying, man.
Especially you're in Vietnam. I'm sure it's not like the mega hotspot for finding people that are passionate about what you're passionate about, right? So this is a good tool for you
to
reach.
And I pour through hashtags on Instagram, man. Filmmaker, film, and then I kind of deep dive, and I try to find people who are posting things that like inspire me, because like one of the reasons like I was drawn towards you is because on your Instagram you have these amazing photographs. And I love photography. I'm a huge film photographer, and I take tons of film photographs. More before the prices skyrocketed, because of COVID. But yes. I love taking film photos, and so that was kind of how I was drawn to your work.
I like that you interview a wide variety of people in different professions.
I think it's really interesting,
but all centered. Yeah, I think it's cool.
I got schooled last week by Prasen. He's a Nat Geo photographer from India, and if you haven't seen that one, that was an interview and a half.
I haven't seen that one. I think I saw the one before that. The photographer, a snowboard photographer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of winter.
Yeah. That was yesterday or 2 days ago. This one was a couple before that. And I'll forward you a link. But like, he was talking about how he's out in the Himalaya. He's been photographing snow leopards, and like,
that's so awesome.
Right? That's so amazing. And I was like, and he was like, I see what you do with your podcast. You make it about the people behind the work. And he says, for me though, I'm simply a vessel to share a story. And it's really about the story, because the story is really important. And he's like, I appreciate what you're sharing, but he says, for me, I can't lose sight of that story, because, he's telling a story for animals that can't, and he was like, right. He's like, I had a baby snow leopard die in my hands that had been chased away from its mother by dogs. Okay. So the dogs were feral dogs that had been introduced by humans. And, and so like, he's like, a person in New York or California or Vietnam might think that they're not connected to climate change. They might think that they're not connected to this stuff, but like we are all connected in some way. And that was his thing. And it was like he just was trying to share it. I was just like, I finished and I was just like, whoa.
That's a wild perspective. That's definitely a different take on things.
It was really intense, man. But he was really like, and I was like, and he asked why I was doing what I was doing. And I was like, well, I'm trying to counter, negativity. He's like, can we counter negativity, or should we just spread love? And I was just like, I feel really, really put in my place right now. Wow. But it was powerful, man. And that was just one. And there's so many people that have these amazing perspectives on life.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, man. But I mean, like, but you know, my dream is to like interview, you know, people like bull riders and everything, because it's like every single thing out there, you know, people are all overcoming obstacles. You know what I mean? Like everyone has. What was it that quote? Be kind to everyone because you don't know what they're going through. I can't remember how the quote goes, but it's something like that. You know, everyone has their own trauma or that they're dealing with.
Yeah, and you never know what being nice to somebody's going to bring.
Right.
Whether it's a friendship or making somebody's day or a job.
Right.
You never know.
Well, and you know, and I remember when I started out as an actor in LA, and there were certain people that were like, one of the nicest people to me was, I remember I was on set one day I was on the movie Angels and Demons, and I was sitting there, and one of the nicest,
the based on the book,
yeah, the Ron Howard movie. I got to be in. I was working as a stand-in. I had no idea what it was all about, and I moved up to LA, and I got a job on that as a stand-in. Man, I got to work on that movie for 5 months. Just every
That's
day
awesome.
in and day out. I'm just sitting there like absolutely amazed because I'm on this huge set and learning all this stuff, man. And, you know, and I was just like, dude, I was soaking it up. And everything that I learned behind the camera was from that movie. It all came from those 5 months of just.
Sure, you learned so much. That's such valuable experience.
It was a huge experience. It was just like this internship. But it was huge, man.
Yeah, I would do that. I'll be a fucking stand-in.
Right? It was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you're not even like, it's like, for example, if you're PAing, you're so caught up in running and doing things. You're not, but if you're a stand-in,
you literally stand.
You're standing
and that's the cool thing.
And you're learning.
Between takes, right? The A-team would come in. I literally, as long as I didn't get in the way, I could stand anywhere outside of line of sight and watch. And so everyone else would run back over and I'm going to sit down now and rest. And I'm just like, dude, I'm going to stand right here and watch them roll, man. And as long as it wasn't a tight spot, like they were totally cool with it. And, you know, and like, it was so huge.
How dialed are those sets?
Really?
Like how clockwork? Is there still like this sense of like stress, anxiety,
totally,
like we're behind,
totally.
or is it?
There's always stress like that. There's always like people are just losing it. It's like organized chaos, and there's always like there's a degree of like everything is clipping along, right? But there's also times where, you know, all right, turn it around. And it's 45 minutes if everyone just waiting while, you know, people have to go through their parts, and people are working hard. But like, it's like a circus. Like you've got so many working parts, and it's just it takes time, man. But it was really cool to see. But I mean, it was like, I think what was most impressive, right? You're in LA, right? All right,
yeah.
So.
Well, I'm currently actually in Mammoth Lakes, which is right outside Yosemite.
I know exactly what's at.
But I do live in LA.
So we were outside the Forum, what used to be the Great Western Forum, which is now just the Forum. I don't know. Did they change the name again? It was in Inglewood, you know, big parking lot.
No, it's the Forum. Yeah, it's the Forum.
I thought they were getting ready to change the name again, and right between that and the racetrack, right? And so giant parking lots.
Yeah,
and they built Rome in the parking lots. They built
That's
built
awesome.
Rome. Like, so they had all of these train cars circled out, you know, like the containers, the train containers, and they stacked it into this shape. And I just saw a bunch of, you know, containers, and I was just like, whatever. And then we got on set, we walked into set, and suddenly it's like, it's St. Peter's, you know, it's the rotunda in front of St. Peter's. And we're just, oh my God. And we walked up, and they have these crazy statues, right? That the props, the production designer had made, and it looked just like the ones in Rome. And they were made from foam. And it was like crazy that they had, in and of itself, they were works of art. And it was just used for a day or a couple days in the background of a shot and then done. It's like, that's what amazes me about these huge sets is like how it's like that.
I know.
It's crazy, man. But
I've definitely worked on, I mean, the stuff I work on is over a couple of days, right? The commercials, it's like a 2 or 3 day shoot. But I recently, and I've worked on, I think the biggest crew I've ever had was we had maybe 90 people. That was a pretty big one, but movies is
it's huge.
And when you're building sets like that, it's, and then considering all the extras and all the talent, I mean, it's a totally different beast, right?
Extras one day on the show.
150 extras. Yeah. I'm always really like, they say the life expectancy of an AD, assistant director, is like 50 years old. And I see them stressed out on the commercials. I would really love to see an AD at work. You should interview an AD.
I've tried.
You should
I got my friend Jackson. I got to reach out to Jackson. Jackson's an AD. All my AD friends are tired as hell.
How do they stay calm in that fire? I would love to talk to like an AD that's dealing with like on Nolan's movies,
Right.
Action fireball, and let's get the missile. Now start the sword fight. Go action. I want to hang out with that guy.
So there were some of the people that like I got to meet like the camera, not the camera team, but the grip team had been that I was on the film that I was Angels and Demons had previously just finished Transformers, and I was like, oh, what was that like? And they were like, you get through it. It was like really exhausting. And they're like saying, when I asked about it, I was like, well, what do you mean by that? They're like, there's just on those types of films, like a Michael Bay or Christopher Nolan, there's no room for error. It's just, there's none, man. It's like when you have those big old explosions and, you got to give it credit. And like thinking about the ADs, like you watch one of those movies, like how, think about like, what was the most recent Christopher Nolan one? Tenet, that theater scene, man, like
it's nuts.
You got all the action, you got swibs going off, man. How?
It's nuts.
Right. I can't even imagine. Or the other one that was like, that's such a crazy one is that James Bond scene. Like not this recent one, but the one before, where it was like the big explosion in the desert, and like it was literally the biggest explosion ever on film.
Yeah, they filmed it practically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was cool.
Right. But this is the thing for me. I don't care how many sets that I've been on. I don't care how many shoots that I've been part of. I never lose the fascination with it, man. I never lose the absolute like geek factor. Like, I love it, man.
Oh, yeah. Me too. I just found movies that made us, and I've been obsessing. Have you seen that series?
No, I haven't. The movies that made. I got to.
I'm
writing it down. Movies that made us.
It's on Netflix. The movies that made us. You'll love it.
I'll check it out. You'll love it. I will add it tonight after I ask them to be done. I've seen it. I had seen it, but I hadn't opened it yet.
It's a cool behind the scenes look of things and stuff you don't really think about, but you'll find interesting for sure.
That's awesome. That's the thing that's crazy. Like watching these masters work. I got to watch Ron Howard work for 5 months. Just the ins and outs of his thought process, and he's a really nice guy. And he was friendly. He'd be chatting with you and stuff, and Tom Hanks as well. Really interesting. But I remember like there was one scene, and they made this girl do 90 takes. The scene where she walks in and sees an eyeball that's supposed to be the eyeball of her father's, and it was in this tight space, and go again. I finally realized years later what he was trying to do. He was trying to tire her out, get her out of his head, and that was part of his thing, was to really wear her down with all these takes until she stopped acting and started being, dude, you got to be a real master to like, know what's your limit,
Totally.
to push people, but, also know how to get them there.
And, I've definitely done things with high performance cars, explosions, cranes, and pressure cannons, and flipping cars, and I've done some shit like this, and it's very involved. And I'll tell you that, and this is like just for like a 2-day shoot, we flipped this car, right? How many cars flipped in Transformers?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I flipped one car, and the amount of energy and time that went into this scene and getting it right and figuring out the cameras for a 30-second commercial. And these guys are doing it for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was destroyed after the fact. I slept for like 2 days. It was like two night shoots. And so my hat, seriously, my hat is off to those masters that do that stuff on the regular.
My friend Andrew, who I met on Angels and Demons, he came on my show. He's a director of photography now, and he's director of photography for second unit stuff for a lot of these big features. He was the DOP for second unit for Bond. And I was like, dude, what is that like, man? He's like, lots of explosions, lots of movements,
lots of explosions.
Yeah, and he's, and he was just talking about how technology has changed the game, right? So like, you used to be, it was techno cranes and then helicopters, but now with fly cams, man, like he told me about this company that he was working a lot with in that interview. And essentially it's, they put which one? What was they threw on there? I think he threw the
the camera, like the
red Komodo with the
Komodos on the drones.
Komodos on the drones. And so he said
on the FPV drones.
And so the FPV, the Komodo was flying, jumping the motorcycle off this ramp and like comes in high, straight up behind him, right up behind him, and then turns as he jumps. So cool.
Yeah, that's definitely the new thing right now. Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
The DP that I work with quite regularly, he's like a huge drone geek.
That's awesome.
And he started putting like lights on the drones.
Oh.
So he wouldn't shoot. He would get these super high powerful lights, and you could put a subject like in the forest, like looking up to the sky or something, and just fly the light like through the dark forest over your talent and do some weird.
That's really cool, man.
It's crazy.
That's really cool.
It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love drones.
Have you watched much of the Instagram channel of what's his name?
Johnny FPV.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've tried to work with him a couple times, and every time I've hit him up, he's always been booked.
I'm sure, man.
I tried to hit him up for that NOS, that overdrive thing that you saw, where the car morphs.
Yeah, so cool.
I wanted to try to get him on some of the driving sequence stuff, but yeah, he's that guy's really hot right now.
He can do things with a drone, man, that absolutely unreal, man. Like, insane. I don't know how they can react that fast. Like, I have pretty quick reaction time. I like riding motorcycles through Saigon traffic. You better be ridiculously like fast reaction time. Literally.
You ride a motorcycle?
Yeah, for sure, man. I ride. Well, they're scooters, but they're like, big wheeled scooters, and
that's great. I know. I saw that in Taiwan, like these stampedes of scooters and the pedestrians trying to get through it.
That's what it's
a
like
different
here, man.
world, right?
And here, like, in the US, you're in the right lane and everyone's going to go this way. In Vietnam, you're in the right lane and everyone's going every way. There's one guy coming this way. There's one guy going this way. Someone's on the right side and they're making a left turn. You literally have to have your head on a swivel and just be ready with everything. And my point is, my reaction time's fast, but like the moves I see these FPV drones doing are so much faster. Like it's just, it's crazy, man.
Probably really good at video games.
Right? Yeah.
I would imagine.
I would think so, man. Super high speed stuff, man.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you would like to dive into? What would you like to do next, man? What are some of your goals?
Um, it's funny because like I definitely have friends that go into like, so I've done longer form stuff in documentary filmmaking, but I haven't done longer form stuff in more fictional, with, you know, with like a true script. Um, and it's definitely been something I've been interested in because I really feel like it's kind of what we were talking about. Like, I feel like that's really where you get to make people feel.
Yeah.
Right. When I can connect with my talent in a certain way and get this person to allow the audience to get this type of emotion across, I feel like it's like what you were saying with the vessel. Like it's the same kind of thing. It's like you're a vessel to this beautiful story and this beautiful script. And how do we bring that to life? It's definitely been something I've been interested in, but like the more and more that I hear from, you know, my friends that do commercials or, you know, now second unity on features or shooting features. And they're like, I'm exhausted, man. Like,
right.
Seriously, I haven't seen my daughter. I haven't been home in like months and I just want to go home. Like, I'm so exhausted. Like, I just want to do commercials, you know? So it's been this back and forth, but, yeah, I mean, it's definitely somewhere I would love to be able to, and I have a couple ideas, but I think that's kind of my next thing I'd like to explore.
I feel you on that, man. It's I think that's one of the things that it is tiring, you know, to just being on those long productions. But I think that's where it comes in as well too. Like, what is the story? If it's a story that you really believe in, that you really feel needs to be told, you know, like my dad, I was talking to my dad earlier today, and my dad 10 years ago was like, you need to talk to Terry. And I was like, and so my dad always is trying to like network me with his friends, and so not the people that like, they were just interesting people, my dad's friends, right? And so he was like, you got to talk to Terry.
Where did your dad grow up?
My dad is from England, but then he grew up all over the States. He moved here when he was a kid. Post World War II, everyone was like, rightio, we're not going to stay here much longer. You know, they all left England and moved all over to the States and Canada and stuff. So my dad was telling me all about his wife's cousin, Terry. He's like, Terry's got this story. He's going to make it into a Hollywood movie. And I was like, Dad, I've been in Hollywood. It is not that easy to just make a movie, you know? He's like, oh no, Terry made a documentary of this guy, and he's an awesome guy. His name is Desmond Doss. And I was like, okay, Dad, that's great. He's like, Terry knows this guy. Desmond Doss is this really cool guy. He's got this story concept. He's trying to get Hollywood producers on board. I was like, Dad, whatever, Dad, you know? And Terry, he kept 10 years ago, 15 years ago, no, 12 years ago now, he told me this, right? Desmond Doss. Terry's trying to get this Desmond Doss story going. And then finally he's like, oh, Terry's going to make this Desmond Doss movie. He's got these people on board. He's found some producers. And I was like, okay, right. You know, it's going to be something that's just like an offshoot. He's like, no, they got Mel Gibson on board. I was like, what? And he's, yeah, the movie's going to be called Hacksaw Ridge. And Terry,
oh, wow.
My dad was telling me about this. And Terry was the guy who did the documentary on Desmond Doss. And
Desmond Doss is the runner.
Desmond Doss was the guy who was up on top of the cliff, the medic. And so Terry was best friends with Desmond Doss. Terry made his documentary, and Terry was, you know, and my dad knew Desmond Doss too before he passed. Like they were in this group, and Terry had this belief and this passion for years. And my dad kept telling me about it, and I didn't believe it, but it was like he had such a belief in that story because he had such a belief in how powerful of a person Desmond Doss was, because Terry knew Desmond.
Right.
And Desmond was this soft-spoken, quiet little guy. He was just the nicest, and he was tiny. Like, that's the crazy part about him lowering all those people off the cliff.
Right.
He was tiny, man. But yet, I think that's where I think if you are going to put everything on hold, you have to have a story that you believe in so much that, you know, that it has to see the light of day. And, and you know, and I mean, I remember watching that movie, man. I was in tears. Like, that movie, like, really shook me. Because when it was a good movie. It was a good movie. And it was more than that, though, because when I watched it, too, it was all those years of my dad telling me, you know, that this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And I doubted him. And when I watched it, and it was this beautiful story, it shook me because, was it that? I'm not being religious here, but like, you know, I remember growing up and like my dad, oh, ye of little faith, you know, you got to believe sometimes, man. You got to believe in something, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Even if it's just stories, you know? So
absolutely.
I know that was a long answer, but long thought, but
no, that's a great story.
Yeah, man.
It's a great story.
If you could go back in time to a younger version of yourself, what type of advice would you give yourself?
To give. Think about others and give.
I like that. I think that's something more people can learn.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like most people kind of figure it out, but it takes some people longer than others. You know, I'm grateful that I got to learn and figure that out so young. But, and like I was saying, there's definitely times where that's not what my MO is for the day.
Right. I feel you, man.
And I usually end up disappointed, but when I make that my focus, and that I'm here to see how I can be helpful today, my life is so much better and so much more full.
I love that. Now, if you had like Aladdin's lamp and you could rub it, what would you wish for?
What do I wish for? What do I wish for? Man, I don't know, that's a tough one. One wish?
Let's give you two.
An Alexa 65. Right. I've never got to shoot an Alexa. No. Okay. What would I wish for? I would wish that everyone gets to experience love.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah. Some form of love. That's what I would wish for.
That reminds me of like, there was this story about Mother Teresa and how a bunch of actors came to her and they were like talking to her, like a bunch of Bollywood actors were talking to her about like her mission there. And they were like, man, you're doing all this amazing stuff. And we're just like running around on TV. And she's like, nah, what you do is important too. And they're like, what are you talking about, man? You're feeding the homeless. You're running these shelters and helping abandoned women and children. And she's like, you help people feel empathy. And she says, that is such an important thing as well. That we have to tell stories that help people feel empathy and see that we all share these same experiences and that at the end of the day, we're all seeking love.
Yeah.
Right.
I think everyone's here and everyone wants to feel love, right? But
I don't know if everyone knows how to share it sometimes though, too, or to go about finding true love, you know? I remember
this is true.
I remember I was sitting I didn't know what love was. You know, I mean, sure, my parents loved me. Until one day I was riding back from the train, on the train from London to a little bit outside of London where I was staying for the summer for a class that I was taking in Reading. And people don't realize that England can get hot. But in the summer, it can get swelteringly warm. And it was a hot day, and that train did not have air conditioning. It had little tiny windows that opened a tiny bit in, and it was hot in that train, and there was not much moving air. There was a father that couldn't have been very old. He probably like, early mid-30s, and he had this little tiny baby on his lap, and the baby was hot and crying. And I saw that dad, and he held the baby close, and for about an hour, he just blew on the baby. 1 whole hour, man. Have you ever tried to blow like that for an hour? An hour. And I watched that, and I was just like, wow, man.
Yeah.
That's love.
That's powerful.
That's powerful, right?
Yeah.
That is love. And, I think that we should all aspire to love something or someone like that.
That's cool.
Right. Now, do you have any advice for young filmmakers coming up?
I think, or
creatives, if at all.
I guess I have two things of advice. One, I would say, get in somewhere where you can find people to be inspired by. For example, when you were the stand-in on that film, go, try to get in a studio, whatever you can do to get an entry-level deal, and just be open ears. And when you have an opportunity to be helpful, you be as helpful as you possibly can. My second piece of advice would be just to go out and do it, right? Like, get a camera. There's tons of stuff on YouTube. Find what makes you passionate. And it might take you a little bit longer than others, but you'll get it done. Just figure it out. Find other people that are there's so many ways to connect with people now on social media that do all different types of things. You could find a story to tell very easily these days, and I would just go out and do it.
That's awesome, man.